Thanks, Roberto, for the presentation and invitation, and also thanks to the organizers of this exciting event. Of course, I'm advantaged. I work here at DTU as assistant professor, and today I'm here to present you about my last research findings about how to enable intelligence in artificial systems. First of all, the general research area of this work is neurorobotics. Neurorobotics is the combination, the combined study of neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and robotics. What we do in neurorobotics is to study the brain in real agents, such as the mouse, as you see in this picture, and to study the interaction of the brain with the environment and with the body of the agent. And once we have a brain model, so we can simulate it, and together with systems, artificial systems such as robots, can be simulated, or real robots. But of course, when we have realistic brains that comprise millions of neurons, such as our human brain, what we have to do is to adopt realistic realistic body models, and also because what we want is to accurately represent the data from neuroscience as much as possible. And we need also realistic environments, because then we wanted to see developing and growing skills of those agents. And once we achieve that, then we can reverse engineer the brain. Here is an example of a work we have done. It's about adaptive locomotion for hind limb locomotion of a mouse. You can see here the mouse musculoskeletal. A musculoskeletal model of a mouse that was working before, and now it's not working. Yes, now. And yeah, I know it's a bit weird because the mouse is working on the hind limb, but we did it because we wanted to reproduce exactly the same behavior that we can see in human beings and also real mice. Actually, this is an experiment that the neuroscientists do. We have a split belt, and suddenly one velocity of one belt is modified, and then we want to study the brain, how it comes, the adaptation of the body through the locomotion task. And we made a hypothesis based on the neuroscientific findings that the cerebellum, one part of our brain, could make a spatial adaptation by modifying the step time of the gait parameters. And what we noticed in our experiment here was that actually the cerebellum was modifying the pattern formation of the spinal central pattern generator in order to, by modifying the parameters of the interlimb and not intralimb. And this agrees completely with what we see in experiments with human beings. Now, my own research goal stems from, in neurorobotics, stems from the motivation of having agents that can autonomously operate in unknown and changing situations. That's why at DTU we have been developing bio-inspired control architectures, and I truly believe that by doing this we will open revolutionary robotic paradigms, because those agents will be able to really learn from real-time performances or movements, and we will be able to, in this way, to understand the relationship between the brain and the body, and by having very less amount of priori knowledge. So if we achieve that, so we can open as applications, for example, safe human-robot interactions, And we will have robots operating with other robots or human beings, such as in manufacturing or assistive living applications, or even we will have the robots serving us as a tool for the diagnosis or rehabilitations of brain disease. Basically, this is what I'm investigating, my research goals. If you are not yet convinced that we need a brain for obtaining autonomous systems, think about the three main key principles for achieving that. One is learning. I hope you agree with me, is the master key, and it's a system property, so it requires plasticity. The second one is embodiment. We have the perfect body and the perfect brain to do something. Think about, I have here a pencil and my hand, and the hand is the perfect tool I have for doing things with this pencil. I don't need to know exactly the shape or the consistency of this pencil, because I've already learned it thanks to my brain. In robotics, what we do is measuring the size, making other kind of computation in order not to break it and to accurately manipulate it. So again, finally, we have autonomy, and this requires a brain, because I have to interact with objects, external worlds, my body itself, and so on. Let me give you a couple of lines about one of the most complex parts we have in the brain, which is the cerebellum. Actually, it contains 80% of the total number of brains in the world brain. At DTU, we have been studying that. We have now a very plausible model of the cerebellum, computational model, and it does many things. But what I want to remark here is that the cerebellum is a sensory area, so it receives information from everywhere, from our body and from the external world, and it provides corrections, motor and non-motor corrections. And what is very remarkable is that it is a data-driven area or structure, which means that we don't need a program. We don't have a program. We are born without a program. And why? Because our body is changing all the time since we are born until the end. And we don't know how it will change this body. The cerebellum just learn on the way. And how? By creating maps. So the brain takes all the sensory information and constructs maps, and those maps are used to accurately perform the movements and precisely perform the movements. Those maps are called internal models, and there are different types of it. I'm not spending time in explaining details, but in robotics we have used such models in order to have these performances. So more precise coordinated movements to mimic behavior of a natural process, and to achieve more systems control compliance. Because as the brain does, it predicts the desired outcome by providing very small forces. And at the same time, it's very precise. What I'm going to do is give you some examples about these two first, and then these last. Before that, I would like to tell you that the results were obtained in the framework of two European projects. The first was my Marie Curie project by Biomodular, and the second is a flagship funded, actually the most ever funded flagship by the European Commission to reveal the mystery and complexity, the mystery of the complexity of the brain. What we wanted here at DTU was not to achieve very high performances directly through robots, but to achieve robots that can learn by repetitions, by using supervised learning, in order to have them flexible and that can learn different things in different situations. So these are two examples that used both of them cerebellar internal models, and the first one was made with the humanoid robot ICAP for online sensorimotor adaptation, and the second one was made with in simulation also with a modular robot called Fable by Shape Robotics in 4 legs configuration, because the first one was for manipulation and the second one was for the second one was for locomotion. In both works, we used also machine learning techniques and evolutionary processes in order to facilitate the learning and obtaining a very online representation of the input space. In these are the three examples. We used the Fable robot, in which we embodied a spiking neural network, spiking cerebellum model, and we did it on the Neurorobotics platform that was built within the Human Brain Project, and we used also a neuromorphic chip to allow fast computation with the real robot, besides the computational effort of the neural network. Now I want to give you an example of how to mimic a behavior. In this case, the behavior is the gaze stabilization. As human beings and other animals do, we are able to stabilize our gaze by using the internal models of the cerebellum. And we refer to our vestibular system. In the vestibular system is used together with 3 reflexes, which are the VCR, the VOR, and the OKR. The first for head stabilization, the second for minimizing the retinal image and the motion, and the last one for stabilizing the eye movement with the scene I'm observing. In this work, it was the first time we were able to couple the 3 systems all together, and we obtain exactly the same behaviors we have in human beings with the humanoid robot ICAB in simulation. Now look at this video. Here you can see a guy performing crazy stuff. Maybe you can think, oh, he has been training quite hard for a couple of years maybe, or months, who knows. What I can tell you is that he has done it since he was born. And this is what we do, all of us, by a process that we call motor bubbling. Motor bubbling is the generation of random movements, and we do that to explore our space and creating sensory motor maps. So, in this work, what we did was to take advantage of this behavior of the motor bubbling, and we developed a spiking neural network for unsupervised learning that took the data, gathered the data from the sensors, also both proprioceptive sensors and exteroceptive sensors, to perform this motor bubbling. And we demonstrated, by building this control system, that the spiking neural network was able to handle with the noisy readings from the sensors and to achieve an accurate performance during a simple visual servoing task, as you can see here with the universal robot arm. Yes. Then we did it also with 4 degrees of freedom. In this other work, we combined unsupervised learning with supervised learning. So we took the same coarse controller we had previously for performing motor bubbling, and on top of that, we put the cerebellar models, or cerebellar controllers, in order to increase the performance during the servoing task. what we demonstrated was that the cerebellum was able to reduce the error during the reaching task and increasing the number of successful trials, as our cerebellum does. Okay, there is a lot to do, and here I put just some answers, like pieces of a puzzle for achieving all these things, such as learning with fewer labeled samples. I know there are already techniques for doing that, not very implemented in robotics. What we want to achieve is versatility, flexibility. That it's still a gap, especially with also with the deep neural networks. We all know it's very complicated to achieve that. But I mean, these are answers possible. We will try in the next future. What in the meanwhile I can anticipate we are doing for the near future is implementing our brain controllers into soft robots that represent more challenges, you know, especially for dynamic control. And in this way, we aim to reveal more the evolution of the brain-body relationship and make a breakthrough in model-free learning. And we have also been investigating tactile sensing for robotics grippers. I hope you saw the demo in ASTA before. And together with Graspian, the company, we have integrated their resistive sensor into processing communication interface and a control loop. So, in the long-term future, we have been building an interdisciplinary team to integrate neuroscience, experimental neuroscience with device fabrication and cognitive brain-based architecture that will open a new domain in underwater robotics. And if we understand the brain, then we can understand when the brain doesn't work. So we can reproduce pathologies of the brain, and we then use the robots as a tool for rehabilitating those pathologies, such as Parkinson's disease, which I'm currently investigating now, together with the Paragit company. And that's it. Thank you to all my collaborators and to you. Any question?
Thank you very much, Silvia. Please, Lazarus.
Silvia, usually they say like ladies first, but now I understand why lady was last. So thank you for a nice and inspiring and forward-looking talk.
Thank you.
My question would be maybe a little bit philosophical. So there is this Socratic notion, like, I mean, I can think about something and then solve it. And then you gave us some examples of motor public, so we actually take action very seriously in order to be able to just fit something in our mind. You also saw that learning is an important thing, but the embodiment is also important. So usually what we are doing nowadays in robotics is that we do some machine learning model without taking into consideration how a robot looks like. We just make a generic model and then we just plug it to this robot if I happen to have this one, or that robot if you happen to have that other one. So how would you see like this coupling of what is my target hardware with what should be my learning mechanism? If there is an answer, maybe there's not that. I would like to have your opinion on the thing.
Thank you. For sure, it's a complicated question. And yeah, what you have been doing is the opposite method I do. So you start looking at the robot, and then you try to fit an algorithm to that. What I've been explaining is, no, we look at the algorithm, and we take a imitation. We want to imitate something that already exists, that we know that works very well, for sure, and then fit it into a robot. So far, we have seen that the neural networks we have fits any kind of robot, okay? Because what we do is try to manipulate the neural networks for achieving the behavior. But then, when we use it, we see that there is an evolution in the learning, in the plasticity or synaptic plasticity of the neural network. So we see that there are things different in each body. And this helps us to not only understand more, but then to even fit the neural network even more, no, to that body and obtain superior performances. So it's not the same if I do this or if I ask my cat to do it. Okay, he has a different, of course my cat is not able, no, to do this. Bad example, but you understand me, no, right? So we have different brain, but of course my cat can do other things that I cannot do because he has a different hand. Okay, so let's start by understanding like the framework of the brain and adjust it to it. I think it's easier than going to the other way around.